everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the new episode of the Dakota Boys Talk Movies. We actually have a confession to make. We started this episode, and then Dakota had an epiphany, as he put it, that maybe since we're doing this episode here where it's movies that are labeled as scary movies that we don't think are that scary, that to be fair, we should pick movies that were made in a for our time. Because we realized we were picking these movies that were like, well, are they not scary because they're a little older now? They're more, they're so familiar that the scariness is gone, or they've had so many sequels it's become a joke. And so it's kind of those things where like, it's a valid point. It was a good epiphany where it's like, yeah, we probably should pick movies that are like, they're supposed to be scary now.
Yeah, because I think if I had, like, say, a child that was, like, 6 years old, I'd probably be okay with letting them watch the old school Dracula, Wolfman.
Sure, yeah.
And those were, like, movies that were terrifying adults back in the day.
People were emptying bowels at the drive-ins. Yes, I see, yep. Well, and we even were talking about Psycho, because I like the movie Psycho, but I don't consider it a scary movie. But maybe some of the reason I don't consider it scary is that I was watching it knowing the tropes, and I'm just appreciating it as a great cinematic experience and not so much for the surprise of the chills that it would have brought in its time when it was fresh. And so, yeah, there's just kind of things like that you gotta weigh into this. So these are movies that we just kind of picked more ones that have been done all in the 2000s, I believe.
Yeah.
We tried to stay even that recent where we didn't even go into the 90s, but tried to stay with this stay within this time here of movies that were made for us, for our generation.
I suppose if we had, probably one I would have picked would be Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I never really thought that was much of a horror movie, but it was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and there are old ones that are scary, like the one that was a Dracula movie, but they couldn't call it a Dracula movie. Not Nosferatu.
Yeah,
that's actually creepy.
That is still scary to this day.
Still frightening. So there are ones where just because it's old doesn't mean it can't be scary either. And just the idea of what is scary where it's just gross with gore, or is scary where it's actually like you are clawing your chair because it's so tense with fear, And so, to me, a scary movie is the clenching, like not just that gross gore. Like that's not scary. That's just gross.
Yeah, I don't know why people. I mean, there's one of the movies I was going to talk about. Before we kind of pumped the brakes on everything, or like let's rethink this whole thing, was Dawn of the Dead.
Sure,
the original one.
Yep.
Like that one at the time, one of the complaints that people had was like, "Oh, it's too gory. It's way too gory." Like, oh my gosh, I can't watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like now it actually seems pretty tame.
Yeah.
Like the gore, I mean, the blood looks kind of cartoony, and but the effects have still kind of held up a little bit. Yeah,
which is why when Zack Snyder redid it in like 2004, it was considered kind of like, ooh, because he tried to up the ante on those things like that one did in its generation.
Yeah,
where they're like, oh, it's too this or too that and things like that. And again, the things that everybody's worried about was how gross it was going to be, more so than scary. And so it's kind of interesting how horror is a very nuanced genre, in that there's gross horror movies, there's actual fear scary horror movies, and then there's kind of all these other like offshoots where they're kind of mixed in with other types of things, like whatever you want to call them, like the ones that kind of delve into sci-fi or whatever it happens to be. And so it is kind of a nuanced genre that things like the parody movies like Scary Movie have made feel not so nuanced, but it really is. And you can really use it to touch on a lot of different things and to talk about a lot of different things. And maybe some of the movies we're going to be talking about today even tried to do that a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into our picks. We're each going to do just a couple that we think are, maybe, we'll maybe talk about whether we think they're still good or not, but are they actually scary like they're marketed to be? So Dakota, what's your first one?
All right. Well, I am going to start off with one that many people consider a really good film.
Would you be in that category? Do you still think it's a good movie?
It's a well-made film.
Okay.
I'm referring to The Hours with Nicole Kidman.
Oh, The Others.
The Other. Oh, my gosh. Did I just say The Hours?
At first I was like, that was another Nicole Kidman movie where she played Virginia Woolf.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. I'm confusing my Nicole Kidman movies.
Yeah, The Others.
Yes, The Others.
Did that come out in 2000 or was it 2001? I know it was right there at kind of that new millennium.
I want to say it was 2001.
I suppose it would have had to have been because Sixth Sense would have been 99.
Yeah.
And this was kind of in that vein a little bit.
I've always felt this movie was kind of created basically to piggyback off Shyamalan. It even had a twist. And the twist is actually pretty good. It's not like, oh, it came out of like left field, man.
Yeah.
Didn't apply to the movie at all. Like UFO came down and
no, I mean, like you said, it's a well executed movie. And like maybe the twist even does work. But yeah, why don't you just kind of walk us through a little bit of the story and where you think people maybe why they think it is scary?
Oh, the story. There's that's the thing. There's not a real story in this.
Not much that I remember.
And it seems like I don't even know who wrote the screenplay for this, but it seemed like when they sat down with the idea to write this script, they probably had a bunch of loose ideas on kind of how to weave everything together. But one of the issues I always had with this film is that it seems kind of like it doesn't really go anywhere.
It was written and directed by the same guy. It looks like he was possibly a foreigner. Alejandro Amenabar. And it looks like he does a lot. Like this must have been maybe one of his American movies that he did.
Oh, okay.
Because I know Tom Cruise produced this because it was when they were married. Not him and Alejandro, but Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Steven, I'm tired of you implying Tom Cruise is gay. How dare you?
It's funny. That's the second time that's come up today. Someone at work was talking about that.
Shame on you, Steven.
Oh, man.
Even if it's possibly true. Oh, my gosh, Dakota, what do you say?
Anyway. Yes.
Anyway. Okay, so basically what happens is this lady's living in this house with her two children. Your usual kind of paranormal telltale signs that the house is haunted kind of start to happen. If I remember correctly, one of the big things of the movie is like the servants disappear, right? And they're kind of replaced by these other people, and these other people are just really shady. They kind of just add to the whole something's not right here. This movie, by the way, takes place, I believe, during World War I?
A Civil War. Wasn't it Civil War?
Whoa. I thought it was... Does this movie take place in, like, Great Britain or something?
We're so on top of this. It's just amazing.
Oh, I have not seen this movie probably in a decade, folks. I apologize. But to kind of bring everything back...
I just remember that one of the other things that's going on is her kids don't go outside. They have, like... It's not agoraphobia, but they're, like, sensitive to the sun is what they always say to keep them inside and things like that.
Yeah, but...
And so it brings more of the tension of, like, they can't leave this house type thing.
Yeah, I swear it's World War I, because...
It could be.
Her husband, in the movie, her husband does come back, and he's, the British military uniform's, like, brown, in both World War II's or both World Wars, so it's that's probably why it's kind of fuzzy to remember which one he was fighting in.
Yeah.
He returns briefly from the war and then, of course, has to leave again. But this movie was so just slow and plotting, and it took its time trying to basically tell you this story. And I didn't really find it all that intriguing. And I kind of felt like Nicole Kidman was maybe trying to act like she was hysterical, but not that she really was. I guess that's kind of a problem I always had with the film. I know Nicole Kidman's actually a very good actress, but I just kind of felt like I didn't buy what she was selling is the thing. Do I spoil this movie?
I think these movies is pretty safe to spoil just because they're old enough. But yeah, it is. I know what you mean. It feels like this movie is just a series of tension vignettes.
Yes.
Like we'll just plod for a while till we have this next part where she's gonna walk really slowly towards something, or it would just be like things like that. And so because of that, you're just kind of relieved something's happening.
I'm actually probably gonna
and then you're just kind of sitting there like taking bets on if you think it's going to be a red herring or not.
I'm probably gonna get some hate here, but this movie's probably comparable to The Shining, the book.
Okay, I never read that.
Okay,
so.
It's The Shining, the book, and the movie are two very different things. They have a lot of things in common, but they are not the same thing. The movie I kind of put up there on a pedestal. The book, not so much. And that's basically because there's like pages and pages and pages of nothing going on. Like pages, like probably
that's kind of a Stephen King trope, though, isn't it? Sometimes he can linger in pointless things.
Yeah, and it really shows when they did the TV remake of The Shining, because it's just like nothing scary happening. And when something quote unquote scary does happening, it's not that scary. It's like, oh, there wasn't even like a build up to this scary thing. The scary thing itself wasn't scary.
And so you're saying that The Others makes that mistake then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't really, there's like the tension. You could probably like cut it with your finger in this movie. Like that's how light it is.
You could blow on it. Okay.
Just
yeah.
Tension be gone.
Well, and they were trying to, and I feel like the other way this played off that Sixth Sense thing is they were trying to make you be like freaked out by the kids.
Yeah.
And they just weren't Haley Joel Osment. Like, just the way I'm not, whatever you feel about M. Night Shyamalan, if you go back and watch Sixth Sense, even knowing the twist of that movie, it's a well-made movie. And Haley Joel Osment, you really buy him, and this one is like, this doesn't. But yeah, why don't you just go ahead and go into, we're going through this whole thing, you think this whole haunted house thing is happening, and then what happens?
At the very end, you find out that the servants, the mom, the kids, they're actually dead.
They're the ones haunting the house.
Yes. And then you realize the movie comes into that it's in modern day. These people are moving out of this house because it's so scary. And my takeaway from this film is like, what were these people seeing that caused them to leave? Because the ghosts themselves aren't up to anything like crazy. They're not like throwing pots.
I think what I always thought was like you're led to believe is there's kind of the twist is that you think that the others are the ghosts, whereas the others are real people, and then they're the ghosts.
Yeah.
And so I think why those people are leaving is that just the fact that the ghosts are moving around doing things is freaking out the people. Like, there's things that are moving and things that are making noise, and we're not doing it.
That's pretty weak.
Right. But I'm just saying, if that happened to you in reality, it'd be kind of freaky, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
I mean, but if I was...
But that's why when you see it from that side, they thought it would work.
I don't know. I guess the Amityville horrors kind of set that bar, and the Shining horror,
Okay, yeah.
haunted house hotel wise. Like,
yeah, I mean those are the the extreme what can happen movies.
little girls talking to a giant pig with glowing red eyes. You know, people are in the house that shouldn't be in the house. You know, that sort of thing.
Open a door and blood just pours out. So yes,
Like genuinely horrifying things. Not like, oh, I saw a little girl playing in her room with dolls. We need to get out of here.
well, she was under a sheet.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah.
All right, Steven, what do you got for us, man?
Yeah, you're right though. That movie is just like well made, but just like, but yes,
That movie is a slow drive in the country on a rainy day. That's what it is.
My first pick is one. It came out when we were in late high school, and everybody was talking about it like, oh, it's the scariest movie. Oh, it's so scary. You just like after you see it, you have to change your pants, all this stuff. And I remember looking and seeing it was PG-13, and I'm like, well, okay, I'm not gonna hold that against it because again, scary has nothing to do with how violent or gory you are. So it's like, but usually sometimes movies become R just because of terror.
Very true.
And so I'm like, oh, well, okay, that doesn't mean anything. But then you watch it and it's The Ring. The 2002 one that kind of kicked off Naomi Watts's career, but kind of got people to know who she was and got her into more and more bigger movies, and including the sequel to this, The Ring 2. And the basic plot line is, some of you may know because they're rebooting it, is there's this haunted videotape that just has a bunch of weird images, but if you watch it, you get a phone call, and in 7 days you die, is what happens. And this woman Naomi Watts' character is basically trying to... Is she a reporter?
Yeah, she was a reporter.
Yeah, she's like a reporter. She's trying to I was trying to remember what her drive was to figure out the mystery of this thing. But yeah, it was she had had some people in her life that were affected by it, so she decides she's going to solve the mystery of it. But, of course, through shenanigans and series of circumstances, through trying to figure out the mystery of it, not only does she watch the video, but her into the movie, her little son ends up watching it. And so it becomes even more of a drive to figure this out, why this video is haunted, what the whole story is behind this girl, Samara, that keeps coming up with it. And so it really ends up just becoming more of like kind of a mystery thriller. And I guess even when you add on what was supposed to be scary in it, it really isn't scary. It's more just like something you never seen before, but I didn't really find it scary, where the girl who's haunting these videos, she died at the bottom of a well, and so she's just this ghost that's always wet. And so you're just kind of scared by dripping water off a girl, but then they have her crawl funny out of TVs, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There wasn't. Again, this was more just like, I feel like this is in that vein of where it was like more of just like a mystery thriller, but I never got the whole I'm not gonna sleep for a few weeks now because I watched that movie. Which is what I feel like was happening so much with everyone who saw this movie. Like, oh, it's so, and people were going back. I remember. Do you remember Dakota? How this was in the theaters for forever.
Yeah, it was.
People were going to it again.
This movie had a lot of word of mouth.
A lot of word of mouth, and it had traction. Like, it just went.
That's actually how I got suckered in. I was told by so many friggin' people, oh, wow, this is like the scariest film I think I've ever seen. And it was like, I was actually so worried about it. I decided not to take my younger brother with me. Like, my younger brother was kind of traumatized by, we watched The Exorcist one time when we were home alone, and that freaked him out because he was like, got to turn on all the lights in the house now. And I was like, all right, just chill out, man. So I basically went to the movies without him, even though he was like the wingman I went to the movies with. But yeah, and I left the theater kind of thinking to myself, never gonna get that $5 back. Never gonna get it back.
That was when a $5 movie was expensive. When $5
Yes.
to go to movies is expensive. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. And again, like, I thought the way it was filmed was interesting. Some of the, like the whole cinematography. It was they did that thing where, in the early 2000s, it was like that thing to do for a while. Was it like where it had that grainy, very gray? What did they call it? Is that saturation?
Yeah.
It had like a saturated image. I don't know what that's called. Where it's like everything is very like more paley, like and blues or something.
Yeah, with all the muted colors and tones.
Yeah, like the muted like Minority Report was like that way at this time, and where it's like you feel the blues so much or something, 'cause it's like the muted tones. And so it kind of had that look to it. So it just gave it kind of more of that moody, atmospheric look. And this movie also, I think, kind of put director Gore Verbinski kind of on people's radars also, who went on to do the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Well, the first 3. Not the other 2. Man, there's been 5 of those. And so it probably helped him kind of kick off doing those. And he also did Rango. I know there's a lot of Rango fans out there.
Woohoo!
Not even being sarcastic. There are a lot of Rango fans. So, it just, I don't know, The Ring, I don't know. And then here apparently the original Asian one is supposed to be really scary. But that's probably just because it's Asian made. And I don't know, Asians are just scary. So those are always scarier, it seems like. And then this ended up kicking off, like, not only all these Ring movies wrapping, but The Grudge probably happened because of it. They started bringing over all these other Japanese movies and making American versions of them too, where it's like, oh no. And then The Grudge got a sequel, and
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting time. I know some people were really excited that, we're bringing these Japanese movies over and we're remaking them.
yeah.
And I just thought that was really unnecessary.
Yeah, and then in the case of The Grudge, they even got the same director to come do the American version.
Yeah.
And it's just like, Americans just don't like subtitles. That's all there is to it. they got to see an American version. It's got to be, if it's not Sarah Michelle Gellar, I'm not going. Oh man. Well, anyway, so that's how my first one is, The Ring. So come fight me. So Dakota, what's your next one?
I'm sorry, you brought up all these feelings, man. Okay. Well, the second pick I have is actually a really recent movie. Actually, I think it has to be over a year old, year and a half.
Well, it had a sequel, so it's probably
3 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's probably like 3 years old, something like that. Yeah.
Doesn't seem that long ago. My pick is Ouija, and what can I say about this film? Well, it's based off of the board game,
like Battleship, which was another good movie.
I find it interesting that people refer to the Ouija board as a board game. Like, there's winners and losers. Like, the winners don't get possessed by demons or their house isn't haunted afterwards. And the losers, well, their lives turn into a horror movie, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how that. Yeah, so what exactly is the story of this?
Oh, good Lord. Well, at the start of the movie, this girl is using a Ouija board to talk to, I don't even remember who she's supposed to be talking to, but it's somebody who's dead.
She tries to say goodbye to her best friend.
Okay. Anyway, but this girl is talking to somebody on the other side who is basically dead. And there are rules to actually using the Ouija board. Apparently, one of the things you're supposed to do is when you get done using this thing, you're supposed to tell the spirits goodbye.
Or they just stay, or what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, apparently something goes amiss.
I'm not messing with a Ouija board. I'll just throw that out there.
Oh, yeah. I am never. In a little historical note, the guy who actually first started selling Ouija boards, he was actually killed.
Like a mysterious death, or what?
They were building the factory that he was going to be using to produce these boards, and he was actually killed while they were building the factory.
Ooh.
I'll have to look for the guy's name. I don't have it on me. Sorry, guys, but just a little bit of trivia there for you.
Well, you guys are just gonna be so ready for Jeopardy after listening to our show.
Oh man, but yeah, this movie, it's kind of like the girls' friends basically coming together, finding out what happened. Basically, these friends kind of open up a doorway and let something not of this world in, kind of like an evil spirit. I know this sounds very cheesy. It's a very kind of by-the-numbers movie that's just holds absolutely no surprises. There's like no twists, turns that you don't see coming. The teens kind of slowly are terrorized by this other spirit, and some of them start getting bumped off. Well, the movie kind of progresses, and you find out this spirit was actually a girl who in life was a really accomplished user of the Ouija board, which
she's a pro Ouija.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if she could, she would have been streaming her Ouija board sessions. That's how good she was.
Wow.
Like she could actually talk to people, and people would pay to come and sit down with her, and she'd use the board. She was killed, unfortunately. So was her mother, and her sister is actually alive, and she's in a sanitarium. The main character kind of goes, talks with her, and I believe it's kind of come to the understanding that the only way to stop this whole madness and death is they have to go into her house, find out where her body is, and they have to burn it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of not that really of an enthralling story. To me, this kind of seemed like an episode of Supernatural, but without the Winchester brothers. Like the quote unquote chills and moments of terror were actually just really kind of cheap jump scares that you could have seen coming a mile off. And I don't think there was a point in this whole movie where I was legitimately terrified. And I kind of just left the theater like, that was a film.
Okay.
But I went home, went about my day. I think I fell asleep a little early last night. Didn't have any nightmares. Kind of didn't really think of the movie after that, other than I think I read in the newspaper that it made a certain amount of money, and it somehow warranted a sequel. The sequel is actually legitimately scary.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna get, because the next one they made is actually a prequel.
Yes.
So is it the story of what you're talking? Like,
yeah, it's the story of the little girl.
The little girl who because it's called Origin of Evil, so
yeah.
I'm assuming it's okay. So is this one of the first times where the first one has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then all of a sudden have the second one have an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yes,
that's a huge jump.
And it basically has the director. It was not the same director on both films. The first guy kind of just, I don't know. The only other movie I could kind of compare this to is Annabelle, where the movie's kind of just, it has a really scary premise, but it was like in the execution of the film, everything was just lacking, and it kind of just left you like, well, that ended. All right then, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they made an Annabelle creation, and then wasn't that better too?
That was way better. And
Isn't that weird how that keeps happening with these horror movies these days?
And they're making Annabelle 3 right now, and it's like, oh boy, where's that going?
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, this is, like, I don't even know. Maybe you could show this to, like, some 10, 11-year-olds to get, maybe.
Is Ouija rated R?
I don't think it was. I don't think there's any...
let's see. No, they're PG-13.
Yeah.
And Origin of Evil is also PG-13. So it does help bring in those teeny boppers when you do that. So that's probably why it warrants a sequel, because they know they have a certain built-in audience when you make a spooky movie that's PG-13.
Yeah. But if you... Yeah, I don't see how anyone could genuinely be afraid of this movie. I could probably watch it right now, dark, empty house on a stormy night when the house is creaking, and just not be at any point in time thinking, oh boy, I should stop this.
I suppose I was just thinking too. I suppose the other reason these are PG-13 is that Ouija's owned by Hasbro.
Yeah,
and Hasbro probably isn't necessarily wanting to do R movies with their products.
Once again, I don't know why this thing is considered a toy.
Yeah, it is weird how it's like Hasbro puts it out and like has it on toy store shelves.
Yeah, you got to be 21 to buy beer, 18 to own a gun.
But happy birthday! Here's a Ouija board. go. It's just it's just not worth messing with, no matter what you believe.
Another little bit of kind of history for you. The movie The Exorcist is actually where, after that, it was like a turning point, and people started to view the Ouija board as actually being kind of evil.
Oh.
Because it's implied in the book and in the movie that her messing around with that spirit board is basically what caused her to get possessed.
Oh, it introduced the demon to her.
Yeah, Pazuzu.
Interesting.
Yeah, because before that it was like, hey, folks, let's sit around and see if we can talk to Grandpa.
Huh. Yeah, well, there was a time that, like, in the 50s when seances were, like, in vogue.
Yeah, even in the 20s, I believe, they were kind of fashionable to go to.
Well, I don't know. I think I've brought this up on this podcast, but I'm a big fan of I Love Lucy, and there's even an episode of I Love Lucy called The Seance. And,
really?
And there's a guy who they sublet their apartment to who's really into spirit world stuff. And then they do a seance to try to get him out of their apartment quicker. So they like fake stuff or whatever. But I mean, the reason they're doing that is because it was in, it was something that was in vogue at the time, like these seances thing, even though they joke with it. But it's like, yeah, there were people always kind of dabbling in this stuff, But yeah, like you said, I mean, it goes back even before then to just tarot cards and things like that, where people are always kind of trying to dabble in that spirit world things. And so, yeah, interesting stuff, but sometimes not that scary of an execution. So, yeah, my last one here, it's based on a Stephen King work, done by someone who had done a couple other Stephen King works into movies and had great, well, one of them was, well, they were both kind of like not huge success at the time, but gained steam as time went on. But this one was kind of the third and kind of didn't do as well one for him. But many of you know Frank Darabont did Shawshank Redemption, and even though it was nominated for some Academy Awards at the time, wasn't really a hit, but became kind of a hit over time when people were like, oh, it's actually kind of a good story, feel good, get busy living, get busy dying, And then Darabont came back, Stephen King, with The Green Mile. Once again, I think it did okay. And then people kind of, it got a movement where people liked it. And, Tom Hanks, everybody always loves Tom Hanks. And then he came back to Stephen King one more time with The Mist. And
I thought he had. Didn't he do Misery, or am I thinking of someone else?
no, Misery was Rob Reiner back in the 80s. Darabont, no, he came on the scene with Shawshank.
I thought that he had done one more, but I guess not.
No, and then he went on, and then he became the creator and showrunner of Walking Dead until he left the show. He left the show, like, I think after the first season. And I feel like we were talking about this, but The Mist is almost like a blueprint a little bit for what they did on The Walking Dead.
Yes.
It was kind of marketed as like this terrifying, this terrifying movie, and they really marketed it like you will be scared, and you're not really.
Yeah, I remember.
You're in a grocery store with all these people, and so you're kind of, it's like this. A lot of times those claustrophobic confined things can be scary, but it ends up going more the route of, I don't know what, it almost dabbles in like social commentary and survivalist type things more with like, and dealing with just the nature of man.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Stephen King was going for, but the problem with Stephen King is he's his own worst enemy. Because I don't know if you could say villain, because there's no real good guy, bad guy in this, but the evil lady is kind of
the most annoying person.
Is kind of this Old Testament Bible thumper that, I don't know, just
religious nut where everything she says sounds KJV and is a Bible quote.
Yeah, just not likable at all, because there is a scene where someone tries to reach out to her. She just is like, back away from me, ho. Except she doesn't say that.
But yeah, I don't know, because what's going on is this mist comes over this town, but within the mist are these creatures that are picking off people that are out there, and so they're trying to hole up in this conveniently a grocery store, which kind of helps them, I guess, have some certain amount of survival goods. But it gets to be a point where they're going to have to get out at some point and are going to be forced to have to get out. And so you kind of set up this whole group of some interesting characters. The star of this was Thomas Jane, who has never been a great leading man, really, in anything. Deep Blue Sea, not a great leading man.
Anyone could have done that. That's the sad part.
It was pretty just, he was there and had a record. And so in this, he's kind of playing more like a dad role who ends up trying to kind of having to be like a leader. But there's just nothing about this movie that really makes it interesting or it just kind of goes. I remember thinking like some of the effects were good, and maybe certain points were like that, but overall it just ended up being kind of slow. And nothing really, there would just be like one moment of excitement maybe, but just nothing over the whole.
I'm going to throw something in just so your little thing. I thought, the scene when they're in the back of the grocery store and they're trying to get the door open.
Yeah.
And the tentacle comes out, grabs the kid, and he's just drug off and he's like crying, begging for help.
Yeah.
I honestly thought, like, if there was just more of the scenes like that, it probably would have been like a genuine horror movie.
Yeah, if he would have maybe been a little more dedicated to be like that. And I feel like maybe that's how they were marketing it even. But it was more just about the people being in the place trying not to kill each other.
Yeah.
Which, again, is The Walking Dead. Half the time, other people who are still alive are more the problem than the actual zombies.
I think it's funny you bring that up because it is true. Because, early on, part of the core group of people, they're just like, well, see ya, we're out. And at the end, you do kind of see them, and it's like, well, how did you survive? Of course, those questions are never answered. It's just kind of they survive somehow. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
but now that you say that, there are a whole lot of parallels between this and that. Maybe that's why Darabont chose The Walking Dead.
Yeah, maybe. But this movie, I guess I never read the story this is based off, but apparently the story this is based off doesn't have a real ending, or it's kind of more open ended, and so Darabont made the decision to give this more of a final conclusion, which is what brings us to the very controversial twist of an ending. I don't know. Did you ever read the actual story?
I was told it's actually. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it because it's not a standalone story. It was kind of the thing is so short. It's with like a collection of other stories.
Yeah, it's like a short story.
Yeah. But yeah, I was never able to read it. But from what I understand, the book ends with him basically driving off. And even Darabont talked about it. He's like, "Oh, his final thoughts are how many bullets he has in the gun." So with that, I just took that thought to its logical conclusion.
Yeah. So what happens is, they're getting out in this vehicle, the handful of them that are left in this vehicle, and you get to see more of these, like the bigger type creatures, and some of and that was the thing, like some of those things are cool. But it gets to this point where they're out of gas, they're trapped, and Thomas Jane is sitting there, and he has a gun, and he's realizing he has there's enough bullets to kill everyone except one person. And so, since they've just come to the conclusion that they're going to die one way or the other, and so he decides that he's just going to mercy kill everyone that's left and be the one who has to die the hard way, more or less. And this is kind of that very much of a, I don't know, you kind of go back and forth how you feel about it ending, but I mean, one of the people he kills is his own kid. And then after he does it, he's tormenting over it. And then the military comes down the road and are containing the problem. And so now he's going to just be alive, having to deal with the fact of what he just did to those people when they were minutes away from being okay. So it's just kind of an interesting way to bring an end to this movie. But at the same time, you kind of go back and you're like, was this movie always meant to be more allegorical? And it kind of feels like maybe that's what he was always trying to do, is looking at, because it feels like every moment in it was looking at how man reacts to these types of situations,
Yeah.
Which is what really the seasons of The Walking Dead have always done too. It's like, how do people react in this situation, or how do people with this personality react to people with this personality in this situation? And so it is interesting now to think about this movie in light of him doing The Walking Dead. But I guess the big thing is this was marketed so much as a scary movie.
Mostly as kind of like a monster movie,
yeah,
too.
Like Darabont did the feel-good Stephen King's. Now he's going to scare your pants off. I just remember seeing all the things like that, and it was like, it wasn't. It wasn't that scary. And was it? What do you think? Are any of the movies we talked about actually good movies?
Like I said, The Hours, incredibly.
The Others.
The Others. My God. It was a well-made film. I have nothing against it. It's just it's boring. I'm sorry. I really get no entertainment from it whatsoever. But it's not a bad movie. I wouldn't classify it as that.
Sure.
Ouija, yes. Ouija is a bad movie.
It's literally bad.
I will put my stamp on it. F for Ouija.
Yeah. Or Fuiji, since you're putting an F on it.
I guess.
Yeah. And as far as, I guess, my two, they're shot well, where they look nice, but I wouldn't watch them. If you've never seen them, don't watch them.
Wow.
It doesn't really matter.
It's funny. I didn't get to bring it up then, but I remember on the DVD for
Oh, really?
sorry. Oh, what was your first movie, Steven?
Oh, The Ring?
The Ring. I remember on the DVD for The Ring, they did have like a little Easter egg back when they used to hide this stuff on DVDs where you could just watch the video.
Yeah, like the actual Ring video you weren't supposed to watch. Yeah.
And Gore Verbinski was basically like, it's just like a bunch of little small pieces shot by student filmmakers. It's nothing really to pay too much time. It's like, okay. So, like, one of the key plot devices in your movie you think is...
The main plot device in his movie, yeah, is just like a bunch of black and white little, like, videos of nothing.
Like, why show it? Why show us at all then? It's like, you just needed filler, and you're like, what's the most student filmmaker thing I could do?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I never understood how what was actually on the video really correlated to the whole Samara story, because it was just like random weird images. And so I never kind of got like, what's the correlation to this to the effect of Samara's death/murder? And so, yeah, it was
didn't make a lot of sense. And then I remember something in the movie wasn't it, it's the last thing you'll see before you die, The Ring.
Yeah.
And it's like, you do eventually see somebody get killed by her.
Yeah.
It's like, where was the ring? Like,
maybe you see it in your head, because the ring was really just the silhouette of the top of the well.
Yeah.
The light coming out of the top of the well. So,
but in hindsight, yeah, that movie was just so dumb.
Yeah.
I can't believe people got shell-shocked by that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it really ruined some people for a while. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so those are just some. You can fight us on them. That's fine. Where you can do that is on Facebook, the Dakota Boys Talk Movies. Well, let us know some ones you think maybe are not that scary, or ones you think we should check out that maybe you don't think we have, or something like that. Yeah, and like I said, we tried to stick to ones that were put out in our generation, but you're free, you're welcome to share whichever ones you want to share with us at those. We also hope you do take time to subscribe to us in one of those places, because all that stuff just, well, first and foremost, just makes us feel good. It just peppins our, is it peppin? Can you peppin your day? It just peppers our day. It peps our day to see you.
Puts a little steam in our strides.
Yeah, it just shows that you care, and we love that, because we care that you care, and you should care that we care. I don't.
If you also hate us, we're also okay with that.
Yeah.
Just tell us why.
And I think the best way to hate us is to like us. Is to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us, because then you can tell us as often as you want how much you hate us.
Just do it very passive aggressively. We love that.
Oh, nothing better than passive-aggressive sarcasm.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you had a good time talking movies, because we love talking movies. So this is Steven.
This is Dakota.
See you later.